Chandra, welcome to YogoJo podcast, and so grateful to Sadhbir Khalsa to mention your work and introducing us. So if you could tell us about yourself and about your work and how your adventure and life passion with yoga started and how you got to where you are at the moment with your career.
Okay. By profession, I'm a senior academic at Hatha University, one of the private universities in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So at the university, I teach subjects like English and chemistry. At the same time, I'm also advisor to the Help Mind Body Club. I started this club way back in 2013. So I get the students and also staff to come and attend my class, which is normally held once a week. At the same time, I'm also a yoga instructor with the Malaysian Yoga Academy. That was where I was trained to become a qualified yoga instructor. And so I teach for them too on a weekly basis. And I also did my certification in yoga therapy. So I'm also a qualified yoga therapist. And because I have been very, very passionate about yoga, and just like most yoga instructors, the desire to want to know more kept building up. So I then went on to do my PhD. So my PhD is also in yoga therapy. So I feel kind of more equipped now, but I just find that the journey with yoga has no end. It's like it's a learning curve. It's like you learn every day as the day goes by, because you are meeting different kinds of people, different kinds of clients, different kinds of children. So you will find that no one fixed routine works for everyone. It's slightly different from person to person. So as the yoga therapist or as an instructor, you need to be mindful, you need to be aware of what you wish to introduce to help that person grow.
Wow, that's just wonderful journey from practice into deepening your knowledge on the scientific level, and then kind of epiphany of all of it in the form of your PhD. That's just wonderful story. Let's talk about your work at Malaysian Yoga Academy. You provide mind-body therapy for various conditions like stress or weight loss, or you also teach breathing exercises. What do you think works best from your experience? I know you said that there is no general solution that fits all, but maybe some pieces of advice from your experience. What works best?
From experience, I realized that there are a few things that every individual need to be prepared with when they come for yoga, because yoga is not something like where you pop in a pill and within a few hours your fever goes down. Like if you're having a fever, it doesn't work that way. Or if you're having a headache, you just take an aspirin and within an hour or so, the headache disappears. But unfortunately, yoga doesn't work that way, because it works at the deeper recesses of the biological system. So one very important criteria that I would think all of us need to have if we want to follow the yogic way of life is that we must be patient. We need to be very, very patient, because we may not see results overnight. Of course, there are certain breathing techniques that we can do, and you find that within minutes, the headache would disappear. But this may not happen with everyone, depending on the condition of the person. All right, so patience is so important. And the other factor is there must be willingness on the person's part of wanting to learn. Because I also noticed that there are times where people have been forced to go to a yoga class. I have students who have come. They've come because they tell me that their parents have asked them to do so. So that's quite funny. And I sometimes find it quite amusing, actually, because they tell me, they're quite upfront. They tell me things like, yoga is not for me because I need something more dynamic. I need something fast. Yoga is too slow for me. So I listen to them, and I would not say anything, and then I would tell them, why don't you attend 2 or 3 classes? I won't say one class because I want them to get a feel of a couple of classes, because I'm sure you know, being a yoga practitioner yourself, yoga can be equally dynamic. Because it all depends on the kind of asanas that you do, that you can even go into bouts of perspiration, especially if you're going to do the Virabhadasana, the warrior poses. You don't have to run miles. Basically, just holding the warrior poses for at least a minute or so can get your perspiration dripping down the body. Yes. So I would think that one would need to be very patient, willing, and of course, for it to work best, there must be consistent practice. Yoga has to be part of a person's life. Just like how we eat food every day, yoga is food for the mind and body.
That's a very beautiful conclusion, because you cannot eat in advance. You need to feed your body in regular intervals with regular amounts so that it gets released and you have that energy to function. So I really like that analogy. So you also said that you used to teach younger children, like 7 to 16, and that now you focus on slightly older kids, or teenagers and young people, so 18 years old and above. So do you notice a difference in terms of how you approach those age groups and how you teach them?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that when I was teaching the younger kids, the ones from 7 to 16, these were children at the welfare home. So I used to go to this home on a weekly basis, and there used to be about 30 children, 30 to 35 children, youngest being 7, oldest being 16. And I found the children there hyperactive. My very first visit to the home got me really thinking, because most of the time I go into a yoga class in a very relaxed manner, because I kind of go in, I sometimes don't really need to prepare, because it's like what comes to mind is what I would teach. But when I went to this home, I recall that I actually need to think about what I want to teach these kids, because they were just so hyperactive. They couldn't sit still for a minute. Not even a minute, like say even 10 or 20 seconds. It was this boy pinching the other boy, or that boy having a little eraser in his palms and throwing it to the boy at the back. They were just so restless. So that got me really thinking. And then I realized that children at this age, especially 7 to 10, my older kids in that home were pretty well behaved. They did as what they were told. But the younger kids, especially if I started the class with a short practice of awareness, or if I got them to do the joint exercise so that the body was prepared for the asanas, they were just not able to focus. So it got me thinking about how I should redesign or restructure my class. So what I did was I started introducing more dynamic asanas. So I found that when the asanas were dynamic enough, they felt that challenge, because then they realized the friend on the right side and on the left side could do, but here they were challenged. It's like they couldn't go into the headstand, or they couldn't do the side crow, the legs were not coming up. So they wanted to do it. So they were like all ears, and they were all observing one another, because it was not so much of wanting to calm the body or strengthen the limbs, but it was more of, I must be able to do it. If he can do it, why can't I? So that was very encouraging for me, because then the children were doing something. All right, they were doing. Then later on, I also realized if I got them to do partner yoga, and I truly must share this with you, because I find partner yoga is one of the best things that work very well with children. Because when you pair them up, one might be slightly better than the other. One would be much taller than the other. But you would just simply see how they get into this arrangement and get into this adaptation mode to get the asana done. Especially if you're doing the tree pose, here they would also go into the tree pose, but in the partner form, meaning to say, instead of having both the palms at the heart center or above the head, the hand that goes above the head will pair up with the partner's hand. And they are to hold the pose for maybe 30 seconds or for 1 minute.
Wow.
So that really worked very well for the younger group. For teenagers, they were pretty good. Like the ones who are 17, 18, basically they would follow you through. But I realized that I also want to keep them interested. So there is this thing whereby I introduce the gentle part of yoga, because I want to get them coordinating their breath with every movement. Then towards the end, that's when I throw in the more challenging asanas.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, especially as you said, that partner yoga,
Yes.
that is really, really intriguing. That's well, you can actually see the kids enjoying that, but the same in terms of laying ground for competition. Although yoga is supposed to not be a competition, but with young kids, you're just looking for those motivation factors that would actually trigger them to do something.
Precisely. We have to get them motivated. Then you find that when they start doing, I think the holding is the one that makes it better. The holding in the asana. So that's when you're going to try and tell them things like, okay, you're going to hold for a count of 10. Then you would see many of them falling off within the 5th count. And then they would turn around to see if their friends are still holding the pose. So then that becomes another challenge for them. So these were the things that I saw when I was teaching the kids at the welfare home.
So it's a little bit like, detouring into the yin yoga and having stay in a posture for a little bit longer.
Yes, but I think in yin yoga, usually the stay is pretty long, like 2 to 3 minutes. Here, at the most, I get them to stay is for 1 minute. This 1 minute is like very, very long.
Eternity.
Yes, it's like eternity for them already. So if they can do 30 seconds, I'm really happy, because most of the time they do it in a manner like touch and go. It's like, okay, I've brought my body up and pop. Before you know it, they have already thrown themselves down to the floor. All right. So a little bit of motivation by telling them that they're going to hold for 10 counts. And I have done little things which are not very yogic, but I had no choice but to do it for this bunch of kids at the welfare home, because like I said, they were simply so hyperactive. There were times when I carried a packet of Kit Kat with me. So I would go like, okay, so today we're going to do the headstand, and then we're going to do Virabhadasana 1, the different variations of the warrior pose 1, 2, and 3. And in each of these poses, you're going to hold for 10 counts. So those of you who get to hold for 10 counts would get a Kit Kat. Yes. So that was some form of motivation, because you could see how all of a sudden they became so focused.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the bribery works, doesn't it?
Yes, to some extent. So I found that like a gradual change in them, because when I went there for the subsequent classes, they would then come and tell me, teacher, can you teach us this pose that you taught us last week? Can we now place our hands on the wall, because I don't feel very steady? So, so I found it very, very motivating. I mean, I myself felt more motivated. Initially, I was a little discouraged to see how they were behaving, but as time went by, I found that it got more and more challenging and more dynamic.
Yeah, but it's also what you mentioned earlier, is that patience. So it's not for us as receivers of yoga to be patient to see the effect, but also for you as a teacher to be patient, to actually see how those seeds that you planted in children that actually grow. I just wanted to ask you about any kind of, good practices from your experience, and how you think is best to maybe it's a country specific, like Malaysia thing, how you manage stress and anxiety in children.
Through the yogic way, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at the school level or even at the university, students who undergo stress anxiety are free to seek counseling, because all schools, or rather most schools in Malaysia and all universities, do have a counseling unit. So they are free to go for counseling. So on my part, because I want to share the knowledge of yoga, I want to impart the knowledge of yoga, and that's why I started the Health Mind Body Club at the university. So then I get them to come to the club, and that's where I conduct classes for them to help them manage stress and anxiety. So most of my movements, most of the asanas and the pranayama and the shavasana and the meditation I do is mainly to help them cope with stress and anxiety. So any form of asanas can be done in a slow manner. It can be modified. Even an asana which may seem a little advanced for someone, if I do see them struggling with the asana, like say, for example, if they need to do the warrior 1 or warrior 2 pose, if they can't sink the hip low enough, I tell them it's okay to just keep the legs slightly bent, or even if the hands cannot reach and the arms cannot be in line with the ears, it's perfectly fine. I just get them to then focus on their breathing as they are holding the pose. So the incorporation of the breath really helps to downplay the sympathetic nervous system, because when they are stressed, you find that the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and that's when the heart rate goes up, blood pressure is affected, and things go a little haywire in the system. So I even let them, or rather teach them simple takeaway practices like deep breathing that they could practice on a daily basis at home. So some of them have come back to tell me that whenever they feel stressed and they go into a quiet corner, and when they practice deep breathing, they feel a great sense of relief. So it was pretty much like what you mentioned just now, that you said what your son used to do, that he would go into the child pose. But what my students have told me is when they go into Shavasana or Yoga Nidra, that really helps calm the whole mind and body. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it definitely has this effect, and you notice that it works for you, and then you're not really surprised that it does work for the little ones, or for young people, or for teenagers. The other question I wanted to ask you is on the back of stress and anxiety in children, because there's also addiction that seems to be a massive problem amongst young people and generally society. So we see different kind of manifestations of that. Something that is quite close to myself is technology, because you can see kids just like being absolutely possessed on their gaming consoles. So how are things in Malaysia or amongst kids and teenagers and young people that you deal with or you have contact, and how do you how would you suggest to deal with that?
Addiction is actually a huge problem in Malaysia. And if you talk about addiction, well, it refers to a wide range of compulsive behaviors. It could be addiction to game consoles, like what you mentioned just now. Then there is drug addiction, addiction to alcohol, addiction to smoking, addiction to mobile phones, pornographic sites, online games, and the list simply goes on.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, especially in the past 1 year, it has been really, really challenging. Why? Because we don't see the children face to face, and all communications are through this gadget, this laptop, and it's very hard for them to really express themselves. All right.
Yeah.
So what we tend to do is sometimes we reach out to the parents. We get the parents to help us out a little. There are some children, especially teenagers, who don't want their parents to know that they're going, that they are undergoing counseling. So because they are already 18 years of age, so we need to kind of respect their privacy. So in that case, we meet up with them online. But for the others, is whether the parents are willing to come online to meet up with the teachers or with the lecturers to get this extra help. And what I must say is, in my neighborhood, because even though we are under lockdown, we are allowed to go to the park. So I go to the park every day. I make it a point to go, if possible, twice a day. And for two particular reasons. One is because I want to do yoga myself. And number two, I want people to see what I do and come forward to me and ask me to teach them. And surprisingly, that has happened. I've been approached by parents to come and allow them to follow what I do. They would tell me things like they don't want to disturb my practice, but they want to get my permission to just follow me in the background and do all the movements. So I take that very positively. So
that's absolutely wonderful.
Yes, wonderful. But the thing is, with kids, because the parents who bring their children, they get the children to do. But I must be honest with you, some of the children may do it, some may not. They would rather go on their bicycle or on their rollerblades that they bring to the park. Okay. So at this point, I must say that dealing with kids and teenagers with addiction has not been very easy, unless there's a specific case where the child is willing. If the child is willing, we go all out to help them, meeting them online.
Yeah, well, it is a difficult one, and it's difficult to make a right call, and especially in terms of different group ages, but also parents willing to step in, and so that's really important role of family and the nearest surrounding in terms of how those children prosper. I really like what you said about doing yoga in the park and actually parents joining in or bringing kids. That's a definitely really good tip to kind of interest others to follow.
Yes. A little bit more to share, because this is something that I did with my sister, because she has a grandchild. The grandchild is 12 years old, and she said she's been having a tough time dealing with the grandchild because he's just not paying attention to his online classes. He can't sit still and whatnot. So what I did is I got my sister to come online, And I taught her a couple of things. And then I told her that since your grandchild lives with you, so now you are going to do this with him. So I got her to just do some simple body movements and then a couple of breathing techniques. And I said, get your grandchild to do it with you. So she said the boy has been doing it. And she said the progress isn't so significant, but the thing is he is doing it. So she feels happy that, he does those practices in the morning and also in the evening. Because sometimes it takes a while to see change.
Yeah. So again, what you're saying, I hear that the role of a close family or a role model that the child will follow is just so important, because kids are not stupid. If you tell them to do it, they will be like your students. They'll come to the class and, well, I don't really want to do it, but my mom told me to do it.
Precisely.
But if they feel that they are supported and that, it's curiosity as well. Oh, my mum is doing that, or my nan is doing that, I may join as well.
Yes, because now that you mentioned this, earlier on, I forgot to tell you, because this is what happened with a few of the parents in my yoga class. I mean, I also teach classes for adults, but when we say it's an adult class, meaning to say anyone above the age of 13 can come, because we have class for kids. So kids yoga would be for those until the age of 12. So the kid who is 13 years old, we leave it up to them. They could either join the kids class or join the adults class. So I had parents who were endlessly complaining to me about their children's behavior at home, of not wanting to go to bed on time. Well, they had a whole long list, and the children were at that time about 15 or 16 years old. So I told these parents, three of these parents, I told them to bring their daughters and sons to the yoga class. And they did, but of course in different classes. So there was this one class where the mother and son came, and then in the other class the mother and daughter came. And of course, when they both came, well, they didn't appear to be like friends. Like, you could see the daughter came because, well, mommy has asked me to come, so here I am. And the same thing with the boy who came with the mother. But as the class started progressing, and when I got them to do partner asanas, so by default the mother paired up with the son or the mother paired up with the daughter, suddenly you should have seen the joy on their faces, because it's like mother trying to support the son or the son trying to support the mother, especially in the Naukasana. Naukasana is the boat pose, where you bring the legs up, and which works on the lower abs, and then you find that the son is able to stretch the legs and keep the legs straight, but the mother can't do it because she's not as flexible. So there was like so much of fun going on when the parent was doing it with the child.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's really, really good.
Yes.
And again, you mentioned partner yoga,
Yes.
which it just shows that those yoga poses are so universal. They work for you on your own, but if you do it together, there is even more joy. I also like the fact that you link this up with how kids behave at home, that then this actually cements the relationship, and that's exactly my observation as well from practice.
Oh, right.
How do you create a healthy child, a child that is happy, understands the people around them, is appreciative, and believes in their own worth and potential, and is able to work with their own emotions, and is loving, caring, balanced? How do you do that?
I think, well, in my view, okay, this is my personal view, I think in today's society, especially in Malaysia, in most families, the mother goes to work. All right, so father is at work, mother is also at work. And I have heard cases where my students tell me that they don't see the parents. They only get to see the parents over the weekend. Or sometimes they are being brought up by the nanny. Or by the time they go to bed, parents are still not back home yet. Okay, so I feel that there must be a little sacrifice on either parent, that one parent should be at home at least in time to have a meal together with the children. I think having that one meal a day, I mean, if you can have all the meals together, all the better. But making it a point to have at least one meal together with all the family members, I think is very important, because that's where a little connection takes place. And it has to come with some basic rules, because I also noticed in my family, we had to have this no mobile phone rule, no reading at the dinner table, because my daughter was very fond of bringing her book to the dinner table. And we say, when you come to dinner, you don't bring anything but just yourself.
Yeah.
You're not going to be reading and eating. So I think having at least one meal a day together with the family is important. So at least there's time to focus as a family unit, and we don't have to rush into eating. So we need to encourage our children to eat slowly so that they chew their food and that they are mindful of what they are eating. And that we also want to instill certain values, like whatever that's being put on your plate has to be finished, and that we don't waste food. Because this is something I did with the children at the welfare home. Once a month, I would provide them with a meal. Because the warden did tell me that the kids would not eat on time, or they would waste food, or sometimes they go without food. So I thought of ways of trying to help them with this. So I decided that once a month, my husband and I would donate food for lunch, and we would go there, sit with them, and eat with them. All right. So it was a practice at the home that they would sit on the floor and eat. So we also sat on the floor and ate with them. And we waited until they all finished their food, because some of them were very slow eaters, because these children come from very, very challenging backgrounds. They are either orphans, or maybe parents are no longer together, broken homes, abused kids. They are children of those categories. So some of them just found it really, really hard to eat. Okay, so that's one thing I would think of if you want to create a healthy child. And I also think that we must allow our children to lend a helping hand in whatever we do. Like, say, if now you are preparing a meal, I think our children should come and help. I mean, little things like maybe setting up the table or peeling the onion and garlic. That there must be some contribution from them, so that there's a little bit of communication and bonding between parents and children, instead of leaving everything to the nanny. I think this is not so much a problem in the UK, but this is a serious problem in Malaysia, because in Malaysia, most of the medium and well-to-do families have nannies. And in some households, there are 2 nannies. So the nannies take care of everything. They are like the housemaids, so they just do everything. So the children don't even wash their cups. They demand things from the maid because they have not been told that it is not right to do so.
Well, it's happening in Europe and in Western countries as well. But it's not a nanny. It's usually a mum or dad who kind of let themselves being enslaved by their children. And it does happen, you know, because you just want to get on with the speed of your life, and okay, leave it on the table, I'll sort it out. But you actually don't realize that you're creating habits that then later on in life will come back and really bite you.
Exactly. So I learned it the hard way too, because at one point I found that it will be much faster if I do up the washing. Then I realized, no, it wasn't taking me anywhere. So then I kind of got little I had little rules in the house, like they have to make their own bed, they have to put their own laundry into the washing machine, and they also had to dry their own clothes. Whether they put it nicely on the hanger or whether they didn't, I decided to close an eye to it because they had to learn at some point, so whenever I had the time, then I would tell them, okay, you want to make sure you have the cloth pegs on so that your dress or your blouse doesn't fall onto the floor. And somehow they learn. So I must say that I'm very proud of my daughter, because when she was 10 years old, she could already make an omelette, because I made her come to the kitchen when she was already 8 or 9. Yes. So, and other things, because when you talk about creating a healthy child, healthy here also means that that the child needs to have proper nourishment. So sometimes I think it's very important to keep away junk food from the home. Make sure there's lots of fruit lying around. So if they get so hungry, they will have no choice but to eat the fruit, instead of having all those snacks and chocolates which are high in sugar. All right. So I think having lots of fruit in the house would be a good idea.
So that's exactly the point, because what is easily accessible, you just access that and you use it. If it's not there, you just kind of don't think about it so much. But what about healthy mentally a child? What would you recommend in this area?
Mentally, then of course the next thing that comes will be exercise. We cannot allow our children not to exercise. There must be some form of playtime. I mean, exercise here could just mean father and son playing a game of football, or a game of tennis. There must be at least 1 hour of exercise time in a day. It could be cycling, it could be jogging, walking. That would be one thing I would definitely consider. And again, this might sound a little spiritual or religious, I wouldn't know, but depending on the culture, sometimes there is this thing about talking about good practices, something that's within the culture. So sometimes parents and children exchange notes, because children may have learned something in school and then they come back home, discuss with the parents. So depending on their religious beliefs, they could share certain scripts from the scriptures or things like that.
So that kind of takes me a little bit into the other side of yoga. So the meditation and its impact on mental health. So it's hard for them to sit still, for the kids. We talked about it. They have nothing to do but just sit and think about anything, especially when we're talking about little kids. So how do you encourage children and teenagers or young people to do meditation? And maybe you could share some of your favorite meditations with us.
Yes. Okay. Yes. When we talk about meditation, most people tend to think that meditation just means sitting down and doing nothing and allowing the mind to reach a state of stillness. But I think that might work for people of different levels. That means people who are a bit more stable, people who have been practicing yoga for a long time. This may not be workable for people who have just gone into yoga. I mean, forget about children, even teenagers, even young adults, or even middle-aged adults find it difficult to sit down and meditate. So this is what I do in my classes, actually. We have such a thing called moving meditation. In fact, the asanas that are done, it's also part of meditation, because you go into a movement and then you hold the pose. And while you're holding the pose, you are thinking of nothing but being in that position. Now, in order to minimize this intrusive thoughts or to minimize this clutter in the mind, we then bring the awareness to the breath. So the only thought that would be present at that point in time would be the breath. So I normally start off that way. So that's the reason why in many of my yoga classes, in the asanas itself, I get them to hold the pose, because during the holding, there is some form of meditation taking place. So it's more like an asana, which is in a meditative movement mode. Yes. Then instead of going straight into a sitting still position with no thoughts, then I like this meditation which I call Tratak. I wonder if you are familiar with it. Tratak is a form of meditation where you gaze at the flame. It could be a candle, but over here we normally use the clarified butter flame. So you gaze at a still flame without blinking. So that,
your eyes would water.
yes, then the eyes begin to water. That's right. So usually we start off with 30 seconds and then a minute, and gradually increase that. Children love that very much, because again, I'm sorry, but this is what I do. I would have to bribe them and say that if you don't blink for 30 seconds, you would get a Kit Kat or something like that, because I want them to focus. It's all with good intentions. Otherwise, they would be turning and looking around to see if their friends are focusing. So I tell them the important thing is about them focusing. Now, with adults, I don't need to have the flame. I can just tell them to focus at the tip of their nose. That is called Nasikragra Gristi, nose tip gazing. All right. So with adults, they have greater control of themselves. So I just said, sit in any comfortable position. It doesn't even have to be on the floor. Even if you're seated on the sofa, it's perfectly fine. But for just 1 minute, I would like you to focus at the tip of the nose and do nothing. You're just going to watch your breath. And after that 1 minute, I'll get feedback from that. So if that 1 minute didn't work, then I would go down to 30 seconds. So I will repeat that whole process. This time I would do it for 30 seconds. So usually 30 seconds is doable. And with those who are diligent in their practice, they show great improvement, of course. They are able to even gaze at their nose tip for even a couple of minutes. Okay, so Tratak is one good thing. Nose tip gazing is another. And one other kind of meditation that I've done with the kids is called Ajapa Japa. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Ajapa Japa meditation is where you visualize a tube running through the frontal part of your digestive tract from the throat to the navel. Okay, so you just visualize a transparent tube and you incorporate two sounds, so and hum. So with the inhalation and hum with the exhalation. So even if you don't incorporate the sound, it's perfectly fine. So then for starters, we could go as you are inhaling, visualize the breath moving up from the navel up to the throat. As you are exhaling, feel the breath moving down from the throat to the navel. So get them to do this a couple of times, maybe for 2 or 3 minutes. With adults, you can get them to do for 5 minutes with the eyes closed. So Ajapa Japa meditation is so beneficial because number one, it increases your concentration power, and you will find that if you were to practice this regularly, it also reduces the noise level in the mind, because the mind is just a very noisy place. There's so much thoughts going on, so much of thinking and clashing taking place. So the moment you just focus on that breath, you're just visualizing the breath moving up from the navel up to the throat and from the throat down to the navel. Okay, then you find that there's no time to think of anything else anymore, because now the focus is on that movement of the breath, nice and slow. So if it's done nice and slow for a couple of minutes every day, you will find that it works at a very deep level, because it helps to develop access to different areas of consciousness in the mind and body. Okay, then
It's like holiday for your mind, isn't it? That you don't have to think about anything.
Exactly. But the thing is, people opt not to go for this holiday. They want noisy holidays. That's the thing. You see, what the thing with the general population is, they love to go for holidays, and the focus is always on what goes on outside. They want to see what's happening outside. So I always tell them, yes, it's good to see what's happening outside, but there's 24 hours in a day. You want to take some time to also see what goes on inside. Yeah, so I get them to now bring their awareness to inside. So you will be surprised, because many teenagers have actually taken to this practice. We have found many teenagers now going through what we call the teenagers instructors course. That means they become instructors at a teenagers level, so that they can teach their peers when they go back to school. All right. So Ajapa meditation also helps with the balancing of the Ida and Pingala, the yin and yang. All right. And above everything else, of course, it calms the mind. So it's so good to help overcome stress and anxiety.
Yeah, well, definitely worth practicing. And as soon as we finish talking, I will try it myself. So I just wondered whether you have a vision of the ideal world, what the ideal world would look like to you.
Well, I'm not too sure what you are expecting to hear from me, but ever since I went into yoga, that's like the past about 15 years, my entire view of everything around me has changed. At this point in my life, I have learned to appreciate yoga so much that a day has not gone by without me doing yoga. Even when I'm in the UK for holiday, because every year we make 2 trips to the UK, because we have lots of relatives and friends in the UK. So twice a year we are in the UK, with the exception of last year, of course, because of the lockdown. And this year we can't go also because of this issue. Even while I'm holidaying there, without fail, I'll be at Hyde Park or in any park doing my yoga practice. All right. So I would love to see everyone start their day with some form of dynamic movement. Even if they were not doing yoga, it could be maybe brisk walking or jogging, or they could be into some form of Tai Chi or Qigong, any form of dynamic movement, so that the muscles are engaged. When muscles are engaged, then there is room for toxin release, okay? And there must be also some practice of conscious breathing, because I always share with everyone that I meet, breath is life. The day breath stops, there's no life. Or life stops when there's no breath. Okay, so there must be some form of conscious breathing, because I've also shared this with my students, and my students will agree with me because they have gone home and tried this. I tell them that whenever they are stressed, the thing that they could do right away is to breathe consciously. Simple things like just placing the palms on top of each other, inhaling, windmill the arms above the head, and exhaling, bringing the hands down. And just doing this a couple of times, nice and slow, they would already feel the parasympathetic nervous system kicking in, meaning to say the heart is no longer beating so fast. There is a sense of relief and they're much calmer. All right. So I would love to see people doing some dynamic movement every day, breathing consciously, a couple of times a day if time permits, and before they go to bed, to relinquish everything and just set aside a very, very short time, maybe like 10 minutes or 15 minutes for the self before they put their head on the pillow. Like maybe doing a short meditation or a prayer of gratitude.
What would be your one takeaway message for families, for children, for mums and dads who are watching us and just looking for that dose of encouragement or hope?
Okay. In a day, that's 24 hours. And however busy we are, whether it's the child, the parent, or any working adult, all of us must make it a point to set aside at least 1 hour for ourselves. This 1 hour is for our personal practice. I'm not talking about food. I'm not talking about sleep. The remaining 23 hours can be used for all that. But this 1 hour is for I, me, and myself. It's for I, me, and myself. So this is where you go into your personal practice, which is yoga, work on exercising the muscles in your body, work on releasing toxins in the body, work on deepening and improving breath. So there must be this minimum 1 hour a day for each and every one of us, regardless of how busy we are.
That's absolutely beautiful and so wise. Thank you so much for that. And I think it's probably more needed to have that hour in a day to ourselves if we are really, really busy, because then we'll feel those benefits even better. Even though it will be more difficult to find that hour, the benefits of that will be just flowing and will keep on giving. So thank you so much for saying that, Chandra.
Yes, but what I normally share with most people who tell me that it's so difficult to find that 1 hour, because especially young mothers, they tell me that the moment they wake up, they need to see to their children's breakfast, they need to see to their spouses' meal, and the list goes on. To be very honest with you, I went through that at the initial periods, but I was quick at adjusting because I was learning yoga at the same time, going for classes, self-studying because learning the literature of yoga. Then I realized that there is this thing about adaptation, about organizing yourself. So instead of waking up at 6 in the morning, I decided I'll wake up at 4 or 4:30. So 4 to 5 o'clock would be my personal time because everyone is asleep. Nobody disturbs me. So I started waking up at 4, and until this very morning, I still woke up at 4. I still did my yoga practice. And after that, I went on to do the daily chores of my life. So this is what I share with many young mothers who tell me the same. So they tell me that they've kind of started off quite well, but then sometimes the urge or the need to want to sleep a bit longer and all those excuses do come in. Then I tell them, well, I'm going to give you another option. Okay, so you do half an hour of practice in the morning, half an hour in the evening then. I mean, however best it works for you, either in the morning or you break it up into 2 separate practices. It doesn't have to just be 1 hour. It can even be 2 hours, but there must be some practice on a daily basis.
And as we said in the beginning, just small doses, but feed your body, have that time to feed yourself with with the energy, because if you haven't got that for yourself, how can you be expected to give it to others around you?
Precisely, I totally agree with you. You need to kind of so-called lead by example. Am I right? If you are going to share this knowledge, you need people to see that in you. So that's what I tell them. Yeah.
Well, Chandra, thank you so much for your wise words, for all the experience and information that you shared with us. And from the bottom of my heart, I'm really, really grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure meeting you, Joanna.